Guardians of the vote, courts, and election integrity. Courts play a crucial role in democratic societies. They are tasked with interpreting laws and ensuring fairness. This role becomes even more critical during elections. The integrity of the electoral process hinges on the impartiality of judicial decisions. Recent events in Georgia underscore this delicate balance. A court decision regarding the 2024 US elections has sent ripples across the political landscape. The case highlights the power of the judiciary to shape voter perceptions and ultimately election outcomes. The outcome of elections can be significantly impacted by court rulings. These decisions can influence voter registration, access to the ballot box, and the counting of votes. When citizens perceive the judicial system as fair and impartial, their trust in the electoral process is strengthened. Conversely, doubts about the court's neutrality can erode public confidence and cast a shadow over election results. This is particularly true in closely contested races, where even minor irregularities can have significant consequences. The case in Georgia centers on allegations of election interference. Such allegations are not new to American politics. However, the increasing polarization of the electorate has amplified their potential impact. In this context, the court's decision carries immense weight. It will be scrutinized for any signs of bias or favoritism. The court's reasoning and the evidence presented will be dissected by legal experts, political analysts, and the public alike. The court's ruling will inevitably be viewed through the lens of partisan politics. The ramifications of this case extend far beyond Georgia's borders. It serves as a stark reminder of the fragility of democratic institutions. The decisions made by judges have real-world consequences, shaping the political landscape and influencing the lives of citizens. As the nation prepares for the 2024 elections, the Georgia case stands as a powerful testament to the importance of an independent judiciary. The eyes of the nation are now fixed on the courts, watching closely as they navigate the complexities of election law and safeguard the integrity of the democratic process. The Georgia case, a battleground for fair elections. At the heart of the Georgia case are claims of voter suppression. These claims allege that certain measures were implemented with the intent to disenfranchise specific groups of voters. These measures have been challenged in court, with both sides presenting their arguments. The plaintiffs argue that these measures create undue burdens on voting, disproportionately impacting minority communities. They point to long lines at polling stations, confusing voter ID requirements, and the closure of polling places in predominantly minority neighborhoods as evidence of voter suppression. The defense, however, maintains that these measures are necessary to prevent voter fraud. They argue that voter ID laws are crucial for ensuring that only eligible voters cast ballots. Additionally, they contend that the closure of polling places is a matter of logistical efficiency and not a deliberate attempt to disenfranchise voters. The court's decision in this case will have far-reaching implications, setting a precedent for future election-related litigation. It will likely influence the strategies employed by both political parties in their efforts to mobilize their base and secure victory in the 2024 elections. The court's ruling is expected to be appealed, regardless of which side prevails. The case could potentially reach the Supreme Court, adding another layer of complexity to the already contentious issue of election integrity. The outcome of such an appeal could have significant ramifications for voting rights across the country. It is important to note that the allegations of voter suppression are just that, allegations. The court is tasked with examining the evidence and determining whether these allegations hold merit. The court must carefully weigh the right to vote against the need to ensure the integrity of elections. This is a delicate balancing act with high stakes for both democracy and public trust. This case underscores the importance of a fair and impartial judiciary in upholding the principles of a democratic society. The eyes of the nation are now on Georgia, watching as the legal battle unfolds and the court renders its decision. The outcome of this case will undoubtedly shape the future of elections in Georgia and beyond. Voter sentiment, trust eroded or reinforced. The court's decision in the Georgia case will reverberate through the electorate. Public perception of the ruling is likely to fall along partisan lines. Those who support the court's decision will likely view it as a victory for election integrity. They may feel more confident in the fairness of the electoral process and be more inclined to participate in future elections. Conversely, Those who oppose the decision may view it as an attempt to suppress voter turnout. This perception could lead to feelings of disenfranchisement and erode trust in the democratic system. They might be less likely to vote in upcoming elections, believing their vote doesn't matter. This could potentially result in lower voter turnout, particularly among demographics that feel targeted by the court's decision. The impact on voter sentiment could be particularly pronounced among minority groups. Historically, these communities have often faced barriers to voting. The court's decision could either alleviate or exacerbate these concerns, depending on their interpretation of the ruling. A sense of apathy and disillusionment could set in if they perceive the decision as an affront to their voting rights. This could have long-term consequences for civic engagement and political participation. Conversely, a ruling perceived as fair could energize these communities, leading to increased voter registration and turnout. The court's decision has the potential to either unify or further divide the electorate. If the ruling is seen as partisan, it could deepen existing political divisions and fuel distrust in the electoral process. On the other hand, a decision perceived as fair and impartial could potentially restore faith in the judicial system and reinforce the integrity of elections. The outcome of the Georgia case will undoubtedly have a significant impact on voter sentiment and participation in the 2024 elections and beyond. The court's decision in the Georgia case will ignite a firestorm of reactions from political figures. Both parties will likely use the ruling to advance their respective narratives and mobilize their bases. Those who support the decision will likely hail it as a victory for election security and fairness. They might argue that it is a necessary step to combat voter fraud and ensure the integrity of elections. This could translate into intensified efforts to pass similar legislation in other states, framing it as a common-sense measure to safeguard democracy. On the other hand, those who oppose the decision will likely condemn it as an assault on voting rights. They might accuse their opponents of engaging in voter suppression tactics to disenfranchise specific groups of voters. This could lead to a surge in voter registration drives and get-out-the-vote efforts aimed at countering the perceived threat to voting rights. The court's decision will likely become a rallying cry for both sides of the political spectrum. Political campaigns will likely incorporate the ruling into their messaging and fundraising appeals. The issue of election integrity is likely to feature prominently in political debates and campaign advertisements. The court's decision could also impact campaign strategies. Depending on the ruling, campaigns might shift their focus and resources to states or demographics perceived as more likely to be affected by the decision. For example, if the ruling is seen as making it more difficult to vote, campaigns might prioritize voter education and mobilization efforts in those areas. The Georgia case and the subsequent reactions highlight the deep partisan divisions surrounding voting rights in the United States. The debate over election integrity has become increasingly polarized, with each side accusing the other of undermining democracy. This polarization is likely to intensify in the wake of the court's decision, further complicating efforts to ensure fair and accessible elections. The Georgia election interference case stands as a stark reminder of the fragility of democracy. It underscores the crucial role of the judiciary in upholding the integrity of elections and safeguarding the right to vote. The court's decision, regardless of its direction, will have a profound impact on voter sentiment, political discourse, and the future of American democracy. It is imperative that the court's ruling be grounded in evidence, fairness, and a commitment to protecting the sanctity of the electoral process. The right to vote is the cornerstone of any democracy. It empowers citizens to have a voice in shaping their government and holding their elected officials accountable. Any attempt to undermine this right, whether through voter suppression or election interference, strikes at the very heart of democratic principles. The Georgia case serves as a clarion call for vigilance and action. Citizens must remain actively engaged in protecting the right to vote, demanding transparency and accountability from elected officials and institutions. The fight for fair and accessible elections is an ongoing battle. It requires constant vigilance, unwavering commitment, and a willingness to challenge any attempts to erode the foundations of democracy. The outcome of the Georgia case will have far-reaching consequences, shaping the political landscape for years to come. It is a pivotal moment for American democracy, a time to reflect on the fundamental principles that underpin the nation's governance. and to reaffirm the commitment to upholding the right to vote for all citizens. The future of democracy depends on it. As the nation grapples with these challenges, one thing remains clear. The pursuit of a more perfect union requires unwavering dedication to the principles of justice, equality, and the unyielding belief in the power of the people's voice.